In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.
Toolbox, the Art of Practical Catholicism. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa, here as we equip you with practical tools to live your faith in our modern world of today. And this week, we have a good friend of mine, Martin Fitzgerald. Welcome to the studio.
Hi, George. How are you?
Good to see you. It's always great to see you.
Yeah.
I mean, tonight's been great. We've really coincided tonight. And we're speaking tonight about freedom, the importance of freedom. God gives us freedom. What is freedom, if you think about it?
Well, I think that needs a bit of explanation. Because
Are we free to do whatever we want? Are we free to...
Well, if I ask, I'm a teacher, as you know, and if I ask my students anywhere from year 8 to year 12 what freedom is, they'll say exactly that it's to be able to do whatever you like, or to be able to do whatever you want to do. And look, I think you've got to go back a little bit, I think, with freedom, because freedom's probably one of the biggest motivators for people these days, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that it's a value and it's something that people just want, because our society has basically said for 200 years now or more that that's the most important thing. And look, it's had some wonderful effects, that concentration on freedom. It's meant that people have been more have been able to knock down certain things that were oppressing them, and that was the sort of idea of freedom that came out of the movement called the Enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was a type of freedom which was freedom from things. So freedom from hunger, freedom from oppression, freedom from slavery, freedom from not being able to do what you wanted to do.
Oppressive things.
Yeah, oppressive things. And so it was actually a freedom from things, knocking down the barriers for me that are stopping me doing what I want to do. And then I think what's happened is we think that that's the only thing that is involved in freedom, and freedom has another aspect to it, which is what am I going to use that freedom for? So freedom from is what we have put into place in most democracies, where we have that freedom of speech, we have the freedom of assembly, where we can get together with people and do things. We prefer that the government not come in on top of us all the time and tell us what to do.
Yeah.
That's the sort of freedom that democracy promised.
Yeah.
But I think there's another one. There's another aspect of freedom, which is freedom for. And if you don't mind, I'll tell a little anecdote. Yeah.
But before we go on to that, I just want to introduce the listeners to you.
Yeah, go.
Who is Marty?
Yeah. You want me to say it?
Yes.
Who am I?
Didn't we see you on a documentary?
Yes, you did. You did. You saw me on a documentary. You saw me on, what was it called? An Education in Purity or something like that.
Yeah, the one about, the one...
And then I actually had written, and they were talking about consent, and consent's a big thing now in relationships, mainly sexual relationships. And I'd written 2 articles because first, when the whole idea of consent came out, the university started to put it into place, and I was at Sydney University the other day, and there were signs up everywhere that you have to do this consent module. So I had a look through it, and I thought to myself, this is basically a thing now because of the hookup culture.
Yeah.
It's really about casual sex.
Yeah.
It's not about deeply committed relationships. And I thought to myself, if you want to fix this, sure, I mean, you can fix a lot of sexual abuse, I suppose, if you like, if you put consent in. I'm not so sure about that, but you can see why people are doing it. And making sure that kids know that they have to seek the consent of the other person. But for me, that's a totally inadequate way of looking at sexual relationships. And of course, according to our faith, and something I believe, is that those relationships should be kept for marriage. And so the problem was, it seemed to me, hookup culture, which stems somehow from the sexual revolution. And they're trying to patch it up. And so I wrote a couple of articles. And so they picked a very small piece out of one of my articles. Yeah. Which, you know, if I was to write it again, I'd probably change it. Yeah. Because it came across very badly. Yeah. But in the end, most of the article they didn't pay any attention to. And I said, well, in the end I said to them, you can put as many consent, you know, programs into place as you like, right? But it's not going to solve this problem. Yeah, the underlying issue. The underlying issue is respect for people. Exactly. And there's no respect in a casual sexual relationship. Yeah. There just isn't. There's no reverence for... There's no reference for the other person. There is no reverence, yeah. And they're trying... So, in my view anyway, I'll probably end up getting on another program because of this, but anyway, that's okay. I don't mind. You're on this program. They'll probably splice it out and put it up. But I don't want any girl to be taken advantage of, and I don't want her to have to do anything against her will, right? But in the end, this is a very poor substitute for good relationships between men and women. Yeah. Or, you know, the sexual relationship in a marriage. It's a very, very poor substitute. And so my criticism was mainly that they're trying to patch up a problem that's been created by the sexual revolution by doing something which is simply a patch-up. Yeah. Now, a lot of people get hurt along the way, and I don't want that to happen. And, you know, and it's good for the boys in a way to have this consent training, because the problem now is that they, of course, they've got so much access to terrible stuff on the internet, and so that can confuse them. They might be kids who go to Mass on Sunday, yeah, and even go to confession, yeah, but they're confused about what's allowable, right, or what's the way they should act. And so that's how I ended up on the program. Exactly. So you're a teacher. I am a teacher. Yes. Been a teacher for 33 years. 33 years, wow. Yeah. And in the same school. Yeah. I teach at Redfield College. Redfield College, yes. Which is the little brother of Tangara. Yeah. And these schools are part of a network. They're part of a network called the Pared Academy. Well, not the academy. The academy is there as a teaching mechanism for teachers, right? To give teachers input. But Pared stands for Parents for Education. Yeah. And those schools, Tangara and Redfield, were begun in 86 and 81. 81, I think, for Tangara. Yeah. And 86 for Redfield. And the idea was to bring back that idea that parents are the first educators of their children, and to really give parents or empower parents to be involved in their children's education, mainly in the area of character education. Yeah. And so there's a big emphasis in our school on virtues. Yeah. That's why we do teach the Catholic faith, obviously, but we're not part of the diocesan system. Yeah. And that's not because we have anything against that. It's just that that's the way we've started, because the founder of Overstay. Overstay is quite involved in parish schools.
Supplying chaplains. And
they supply chaplains. I'm in Overstay myself,
yes.
So a number of the teachers are in Overstay, and some of the parents are in Overstay as well. They wanted a school for their children, which would teach the Catholic faith, which would emphasise character, and would also have, teach them the spirit of Overstay, which is the spirit of obviously love of God, first up, and to do things for the glory of God, but also the human virtues of working hard, of being loyal to your friends, of being honest, being those normal prudence, justice, temperance and fortitude, all of those virtues that have been part of Western civilization from even from before Christianity came along.
Yes.
But Christianity recognised...
I'm sure you teach Western civilization and the great things about Western civilization.
We do teach great things about Western civilization,
including Latin as well.
Well, yeah, I taught Latin for many years. Unfortunately, with the way things have happened, we've had to diminish that. But who knows? We might get it back.
But Latin is the language of the educated, isn't it?
Used to be. I mean, a lot of people don't realise this, but sort of the people of the Enlightenment, like, for example, Sir Isaac Newton and even later, they all wrote their things in Latin. The reason why was because all the other scholars in the world could understand it.
So they wrote it for the educated.
English has sort of taken that over now.
Yeah.
But it was a time when people, they learnt Latin because then they could communicate with each other right across the Western world.
It's a beautiful thing.
A beautiful thing.
I find it to be a beautiful thing. But let's steer course onto freedom.
Okay. Well, let's go back to that and.
So define what freedom is.
Okay, freedom is basically to do what you think to be the right thing.
Okay.
To be allowed and to be able to do the things.
Is that the same as liberty?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. You see, when our Lord talks about, this is a philosophical thing, and we don't need to talk about what our Lord says, but it can help, right? And in the voice of charity, for your audience would know this, that our Lord says, the truth will set you free. Mm. And that's the liberty that most people, I would think up until about the 20th century, sort of understood as liberty. That it wasn't simply a matter of doing whatever you felt like, right?
Yeah.
There's a great quote from Edmund Burke, who was around at the time of the French Revolution. He was an English writer. And he said that, how does it go? It goes, people of intemperate minds can never be free. He said their passions forge their fetters. Fetters are chains, right?
Yeah.
And when in the whole tradition of liberal education, for example, now when we talk about liberal education, we talk a lot about Western civilization, right?
Campion College.
Yeah,
that's what comes to mind. Yeah. Campion College.
And the Ramsey
Big shout
Institute.
out to them. Yeah.
This is liberal education.
Fantastic organisations.
Yeah. This is liberal education. So what does that mean? It means an education for liberty.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean an education so that you can do whatever you like. Mm-hmm. It's an education which actually liberates you. Why does it? How does it do that? Well, it involves the virtues. It involves getting to know about what it means to be a free and responsible person. And so it's not just about doing what you feel like. It's about doing what, in conscience, and after studying things, and after looking at them, and after studying them, and having some sort of an idea of where you've come from in the culture, to realise this is what I want to do. This is what I should do, even, right? And so I need liberty, that external liberty, to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So I need to be able to have the initiative. I need to be able to have the initiative to, for example, create schools.
Yeah.
Right? I need to have the liberty to be able to teach and not be highly constrained by Nessa. okay?
Okay, yep.
Or I need to be able to live and contribute to a faith community if I want to.
Yep.
That I need to be able to have the liberty to be able to employ people in a school or in an institution which are going to help that institution go forward, yeah, who agree with the things that institution is involved in and help it go forward. That's a really important liberty to have, and that was what we would call the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, yes, freedom of assembly. You see, in a certain sense, freedom of speech was originally so prized because many people were, in a way, rebelling against the Catholic Church and wanted freedom in that sense, freedom of religion. Now, I think we've learned a lot since then, and we've learned that we need to give people freedom to believe. You can't constrain people to believe. But if people want to believe, you should give them the possibility of doing that, of not having to go against their conscience, of being able to set up a church, an institution which has certain values. That's freedom of assembly, right? And so freedom then becomes something, well, it's not just about what I feel like doing, it's about what's the best thing for me to do, right?
Ah, okay. So it's liberating you, perhaps, out of this state of mind of just following your blind emotions or following whatever you just feel like you want to do, into this state of mind, into a more refined state of mind of doing what's right. Maybe following what you want to do within the parameters of what's right.
Yeah, but
in accordance with the natural law, perhaps.
When you think about it too, I mean, liberty, the whole the Enlightenment concentrated a lot on the individual, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Me.
Well, that's a good thing.
Me, myself, and I.
Because in the end, Christianity has contributed to that. Because Christianity comes along and says every individual is important. Because every individual person, Christ has died for them.
Yeah.
So sometimes the ancient world was a very collective type world. People did things together, and they did them in the way that the king wanted them to do it, or the ruler wanted them to do it. And sometimes their lives were very cheap. So the concentration on the individual is really important. The dignity of every person becomes important. But we've got to understand too that in a democracy that prizes that, you also have to think about that person who's part of a society and even part of a family. Mm-hmm. So, Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas takes this up, says that human beings are political animals.
Yes, we are.
What does he mean? He doesn't mean that you go out, you have to join a political party. He says we're political animals because we live in a polis, we live in a city. We are social animals, okay? And that means we have obligations to other people. And I'm afraid the liberal attitude to things was, well, it's me and the other person, and my liberty ends at the other person's nose, right?
Yep.
But it seems to me that there wasn't this idea that, wait a minute, we owe other people a bit more than that, It's not as if I can just go, I'm just going to do what I like, and so long as I don't step on anybody else's toes, I'm okay. We have to be more than that, And Catholicism helps us to understand that that's not enough. Jesus helps us to understand that that's not enough. We have obligations to the people around us. Doesn't mean that we should be in each other's pockets all the time and messing with other people's lives.
Yeah.
But in the end, we do have to create, as much as possible, a civilization of love. And that means that you have people around you. The very fact that you have people around you means that I can't just do what I feel like. But the anecdote I wanted to tell you is
that's how you build a society.
Yeah, it's how you build a society.
That's how you build a society.
And what's the problem with the society at the moment? It's atomized.
Yeah.
You have individuals who are walking around like this, clashing up against each other.
Yeah.
But there's no solid relationships oftentimes. I mean, this falls into not falls into, but many writers at the moment are talking about we have a pandemic of loneliness. Because
that's right.
we have people who have lived their lives like that. And then, of course, they don't have friends and a network that bolsters them, right?
Yeah. That's a big problem today. So many men aren't part of fraternal groups. They have no sense of fraternity in their life. Yeah. They have no camaraderie. Yep. And I find it hard to compute how one could live their life without some kind of fraternity or camaraderie in life.
Well, they don't do well.
Yeah.
I mean, the psychologists will tell you that these things are amongst the most important things that you have, these relationships. And if you don't have them, you can suffer a lot, mentally and physically. I mean, it's well known that men who are married, for example, are much healthier than men who are not, overall, right?
Wow.
I mean, statistically.
Yeah.
And when they talk about, when we talk about happiness, for example, what are the big things that seem to help people to be happy is social networks and relationships.
It's as if we're made for communion. We're made for one another. We're made to be in communion with one another and to think about the other person. We can't be going about our day every single day without thinking of my neighbour's needs or being considerate. What kind of a society are we building? You know, as George Costanza, I don't know if you remember the episode in the Chinese restaurant where somebody took the phone off him even though he was waiting in line. So what kind of a society are we building? We live in a society.
Yeah. And
but,
I think with all the good things that came with the Enlightenment in some ways, that atomization, and I think I'm not the only one who thinks that way. I mean, you read people like Charles Taylor, for example.
Yeah.
And Charles Taylor talks about this, and he talks about how are we going to replace what we had? What are the bonds that we're going to form? And I think we have to get used to the fact that we cannot just simply regard ourselves as an atom which is flying through a universe, knocking up against people, and maybe I'm a bigger atom than everybody else.
Yeah.
But in the end, once you atomize people, you're losing something really important. You're losing what enriches them from other people and how they enrich other people. And the best way of seeing that is in the family. And of course, the Enlightenment tends to break those things apart because it emphasises so much. It emphasises individuality so much. And we need to somehow recover that. And I think, I mean, many people I think are realising that this is what our faith does, is that it brings people together, that it helps people to bolster each other, it helps them to live in a world which has meaning. And so I think there probably needs to be a huge corrective to the idea of freedom.
Yeah.
Not political freedom and so forth. I think that's in danger in some ways. But in the sense of our individual freedom. What's my individual freedom? I'll go back to this anecdote I was going to tell you, because I think it illustrates something very good. So there was a boy, he probably in year 8 or 9. He hadn't gone to our school in primary school, but I remember him telling me, I hate this place. I hate this school. Right? He said, there's just rules everywhere, you know, and it's a bubble. And you know, it's just so oppressive, and you've got no freedom here. I mean, which school has...
Sounds like every school.
Sounds like a school.
Sounds like a
school, and that's a bit the problem. And he was really feeling this, and I said to him, I was trying to think, how can I answer this, right, in a way that he's going to understand? So I said to him, well, look, let's put yourself in a situation where you've got everything. You can do anything you like.
Yeah.
Right? Anything you like. But the question doesn't finish there, or the issue doesn't finish there. Once you've got that, then what are you going to do? With all that freedom you've got, what are you going to do with it? Now, you might say, well, I'll do whatever I want.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I'm going to make as much money as I can. I'm going to get as much pleasure as I can. I'm going to get, do whatever I like.
Yeah.
Okay, and once you do that, what have you built? Right? What have you built? What have you done which is worth it? So immediately you're asking yourself about worth. The issue is not just freedom, it's what am I going to build with this freedom that I have? What am I going to do with it? Am I going to be loving towards the people around me?
No.
Well, you could decide that.
Yeah.
But you won't decide it if you say, the most important thing is that I get to do what I want.
Okay, yep.
Or what I feel like. Yep?
Yes.
And so going back to that liberty of education is to pull it in and go, what's the best thing that I can do with this? And the best thing you can do with it is love other people. That's the best thing you can do. I mean, the best thing you can do is love God.
So it's changing mindset from whatever I can do or whoever or whatever I can be to what is the best.
It's the best I can do with my
What
freedom.
is the best? Doesn't that sound like love?
It is.
Because you want the best for the other person.
Exactly.
What is the best outcome?
And what's the best for me?
Yeah.
The best thing I can do with my life is love God. Love God.
And will doing the best thing make me happy?
Yeah. Necessarily.
Yeah. So, but I think,
and of course, when you're a young guy or a young girl, I think that's hard to see sometimes.
Yeah.
Because so many other things are pulling you in different directions. It looks like other people are happier, particularly when you're young. If someone has a better pair of shoes than you, they look like they're happier. But part of growing up is realising that that's not what is going to make me happy. That what's going to make me happy is actually doing things for other people. And so the whole process of maturation is about turning from myself outwards.
Yeah.
And that it goes against so much that we're taught, that the boys have in the air, or students have in the air these days, is that there's so many ads which are unapologetically look after yourself, right? Look after yourself. I mean, we used to have a term for this, which was called looking after number one, and that was not regarded as something which was very good for many people. They say, "Oh, he just looks after number one." But I think we've lost that idea that we have to. It's not a good thing just to look after number one. It's a good thing to look after the people who are around you. How are you going to form a family with children if your attitude is, I'm going to look after number one? It won't work.
That's not going to be a very functional family. And hence, the building block of society, it's not going to be a very functional society. I mean, that's why sometimes, I mean, I don't know if you feel this, maybe we live in Sydney, and we're in Sydney too much, but there's a lot of, there's no consideration sometimes when you're out and about in your day-to-day life with people around you, just traffic-wise, everything else. What kind of a society would we build where nobody cares at all about other people? There are no considerations, even in small details. How about working with somebody day-to-day? How about starting a family? How about caring for your parents? How about making some tough moral decision, perhaps, at work? Or as a politician, now you're in public office. Whoever you are, or whatever you are in society, having this liberated mind with this true education will free you to be a better building block of society, and we're going to have a better society.
Of course. This is what originally people thought of as a liberal education.
Yeah.
You were liberated from just following your whims,
just
following whatever you felt like, just following, oh, well, I'll do whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they used to have other things that they taught them, like king, God, and country, right? And
God, country, and family.
Yeah.
Deus, patria, familia.
Yeah.
That's my
That's
motto,
your motto.
on my on my coat of arms.
That's right.
I didn't wear my crest ring and my signet ring tonight.
But those sort of things are very important. And then you realise that this falls squarely into the whole area of even the catechism, right?
Yeah.
Which is, what are we here for? Well, we're here to know, love, and serve God.
Yeah.
And to enjoy Him forever in the next life. Right?
So it makes sense. If a God exists, all this stuff clicks a little bit more. There's some kind of an accountability.
But even
because if there wasn't a God, why would I care about my neighbour?
Well, that's the famous Dostoevsky thing, right? but in the end, even people like who lived, 400, 500 years before Christ realised the pettiness of trying to live your life on the basis of eating, drinking, making merry, having plenty of money, basing your life on pleasure. They realised this isn't solid happiness. This isn't solid goodness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They understood that, amongst other reasons, because they had seen people go again and again in that direction, and it hadn't taken them very far.
Yeah.
They could see it too, that that sort of attitude to life was a sort of a barbarian attitude.
Yeah.
And they thought of themselves, we built this place called Athens on the basis not of doing whatever you felt like, but of doing what you should, and of having a civic mindedness and wanting to get things done and wanting people to be able to live a reasonably good life. I mean, they didn't understand. They didn't understand that.
And that was good for everyone.
Well, except for perhaps for the slaves.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget the slaves in Athens, but at least it was
just call it employment.
And of course, as democracies grew, the idea of democracy grew, helped by Christianity, by the way, that it was that regard. Well, you can't regard these people who work for you as just things. You have to begin to regard them as human beings.
Wow.
Christianity was the thing that brought that around. Even though St. Paul, as a lot of people know, accepts the fact that there are slaves, but he's the one who liberates them by saying there's no freedmen anymore nor slaves in Christ. Right?
Wow. So that would have elevated that society to the supernatural level.
And
or maybe to the natural level, because it's human dignity.
Level. I mean, Christianity's not, the famous phrase that, that grace doesn't destroy nature.
Yeah.
It elevates nature.
Yeah.
And I think most of us who try to practice our faith realise that we're probably better people doing that than if we didn't have it. There's a very famous English writer by the name of Evelyn Waugh, who wrote Brideshead Revisited and quite a number of other great English novels. And he wasn't a very nice person, apparently. Yeah. And he was an unusual fellow in Oxford of the time, because he became a Catholic, and the sort of Catholics were, that was sort of fast way to going crazy, or, for degradation and hell. And but he wasn't a very pleasant fellow, even though he'd converted. And someone said to him once, he said, "Evelyn, I don't understand it. You're such an unpleasant fellow, and yet you say that you're a Catholic." And he said, "Well, just think how much worse I would be if I were not."
Wow.
Which I think we could also, I mean, I think Christianity lifts people up and makes them better. And
is the natural law not enough to make a society?
That's a good question. That's a very.
I just thought of it now.
That's a very good question.
Is the natural law insufficient?
I have always wanted to think that the natural law is in a way enough, because I think you get people who live the natural law in their own lives. They may not know Christianity, but they live the natural law in their own lives. And I think to myself, anyone can understand this. Like, anyone can understand.
Anyone can, really?
Yeah, I think so. Anyone can understand it. And I would like to think that the natural law would definitely create a much better place than we have now, in my view. But I don't think we're just made for that anymore. I think once Christ has come to the earth, our lives are there in Christ.
Yeah. But for a society, if you build it on the natural law, will it succeed?
Well, it's better than the opposite.
Yeah.
It's better than not. Like a society that we have now where you have euthanasia, where you have abortion, that's not a good society. It's not a good society.
Or should we affirm quas primas and the sovereignty of Christ the King above all?
No, well,
and the church's primary place in society, guaranteeing its rights.
No, well, guaranteeing its rights. Yes.
Shall we restore Christendom?
No, I think there were a lot of aspects of Christendom which weren't that great. To tell you the truth.
Could we say?
And the liberty of people is one of those, right? And the liberty of being able to, because Christendom sort of says, in a way, I mean, it was much better than a lot of people paint it now, but Christendom, in a way, it had a lot more freedom than people think it did, I think. And I mean, there's good evidence for that people thought very differently, right? Within Christendom, and there were fights amongst theologians, and there was a sense of liberty already there. But I think the primacy of religion is fundamental, but I don't think it's the primacy of church structures. Okay. See, there was a sense in which the priests and the bishops and so forth, they were part of
the social class.
A certain social class of society. And that, in a way, is not what our Lord was like.
Yeah.
Because what does he say? What does he say the fundamental thing of his ministers is? What is it? Service.
Wow.
Service. The church is there to serve the people. It's not the other way around.
Yeah. So
that's not to denigrate the office of priests at all. But at the same time,
it doesn't need to be raised to that social level where it's a social class and
they ended up,
there's some kind of social authority over everybody.
And so people go, well, you know,
but priests,
Father so and so goes for the Bulldogs, so we all have to go for the Bulldogs. Well, no.
Yeah.
Like, I like the Bulldogs, but
or the village, or we cast back to a Lebanese mindset. You know, the village priest wants to settle a fight between two people. The village priest is the mediator for the village.
Look, sometimes
the reason I say that is because I can't see how this sort of clerical mindset applies to today with young people.
No.
I think it's an old school sort of thing in my grandparents' days.
And look, you know, sometimes, I mean, I can get on to what you're talking about with the Lebanese because in a similar way it was the same, it was similar in Ireland.
I knew you were going to say that with the Irish.
It was similar in Ireland. But people now denigrate that. Like, there's a very strong anti-clerical...
Now it's flipped the other way.
And what they don't understand and what they don't remember is that Ireland was under the thumb of a certain other country in the area for a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
Who were the only people who kept the country together, in a way?
The Catholic Church.
The priests.
Yeah.
Okay. And my mum's Australian,
yeah,
but my dad was Irish, and my mum used to get in typical sort of Australian fashion. She used to get a bit annoyed with the deference that was given to priests, like that. You know, it's good to have deference for the priests, right? But the priests shouldn't want it.
Yeah.
You know, in the sense that they need to be respected, and they need a certain prestige, but they shouldn't demand that. because Christ didn't demand it.
Yeah. You know what's a very cool thing I've observed is with the Coptic Catholic clergy and the Coptic author, in the Coptic tradition, culturally, people come to kiss the priest's hand, and it's customary for the priest to pull his hand away in a sign of humility. And I was speaking to a priest friend of mine, a Roman priest, who went there as well. People were kissing his hand, and by the end of it, he found out he was supposed to pull his hand away, and he said, "Well, I was the least humble person out of everybody,
Well, he didn't
not pulling
know,
my
right?
hands away." Yeah,
He probably felt like he would have liked to pull it away. Yeah.
but getting
mean,
back to the topic of freedom, I'm just thinking about today. There's so many complications for today about freedom and obstructions about what freedom is, and how can it be applied today? What do we tell modern man about freedom? How do we communicate this message?
For the best thing. Search for the truth.
And I want to harken back to the idea of distinguishing between happiness and pleasure, because that's the problem for millennials. That's the problem for modern man today, is that they see their freedom leading them to pleasure, and that's that's happiness. And we'll just get more of that, more fix of that, whatever it is, whether it's wealth, whether on a sexual level, whether it's getting that promotion. It's all about, everyone's chasing a kick. Everyone wants a kick.
And
that's a problem.
But it's very interesting. If you dig, on an individual level with people, they are very reluctant to tell you that those things bring them happiness. In general, they understand. They sort of, on a theoretical level, they understand that that's not what brings them happiness. But I can give you, there's a very good, if you want to join up the happiness with the virtue and with Christianity even, there's a very good book by a fellow by the name of Martin Seligman, and it's called Authentic Happiness. Right?
Authentic Happiness.
And everybody should read Authentic Happiness, in my view. Right? Martin Seligman is a psychologist, American psychologist, and he was actually he had a stint as the president of the American Psychological Association.
Yeah.
And in Authentic Happiness, what was he trying to do? He and his colleagues decided, we're getting all of these people who, psychologist's job was to get people who fell through the safety net of society. Isn't that true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? And the safety net of society was sort of mostly people are okay, they get along with things. We just got to pick up these ones who fall through.
Yeah.
And then he said, these guys realised in the 1980s and 90s, there are so many people slipping through. And so as a good psychologist, as a good doctor, he said, wait a minute, let's have a look at not just what we can do for the people who've slipped through, but what helps people not to slip through. Okay?
Yeah.
And then he said...
Make the net a little less gaps in the net?
Oh, well, no. What helps people not to get to that stage? What are the best things? What's preventative medicine in this area?
Yeah.
Okay? So he said, well, it had to be something which was universal.
Yeah.
There had to be cross-cultural.
Yeah.
And it had to be palatable for just about anybody. So he said, well, let's go back and have a look at all of the different traditions from, Bushido in Japan to Confucianism to Christianity to the ancient Greeks, etc. And of course, he comes up with the four cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. He calls them different things. He calls them self-discipline, toughness, personal toughness. I mean, you can change the language, but it's the same things. So there were four, and then he added two, right? These were happy people. When people were happy, what did they have? They had these things. He called these things qualities. And the two he added were a sense of the transcendent, so that there's something beyond you. Now, he didn't say it was religion, but he said religion's part of that. But what's a sense of the transcendent? It can even be a sense of the natural law.
Wow.
That there's a law there, which I didn't make up, and so that would be the sort of law which would get me to help Jews in the Second World War.
Yeah.
Right? Not get involved in the genocide of Jews.
Yeah.
Something there, right? And it would get me to see injustice where it is and try and fight against it.
Yeah.
And the classic person that I always think of with that, even though in his personal life is a bit, was George Orwell.
Oh.
George Orwell was an atheist.
Yeah.
But in the end, he knew that totalitarianism was wrong. And he knew he had to fight against it.
Yeah.
And he knew he had to warn people about Big Brother. And he could see when the Russian Revolution went wrong, he could see that and said this was just these guys getting power.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's a sense of transcendence there. There is a right and wrong that I don't make up.
Yeah.
I don't make it up. I've got to find it somewhere.
But we can reason to the sense of the transcendent.
Yeah.
There's something
the transcendent
there.
means there's something beyond me and bigger than me.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
Now, religion's included in that. Right?
Religion.
Of course.
Of
Our
course.
faith.
Yeah.
I'm not the ultimate. Yeah.
Well, law of contingency. Who put this natural law here?
Of course.
Who put it here?
And when you asked me
must be
before
somebody
if
else.
natural law is sufficient on its own, I think people can see the natural law.
Yeah.
I think they can come to those conclusions. Like, what are the principles of natural law? Well, they have to be to get the natural law. You have to get basic needs first and go through the needs. What do people need?
Could we say that when we elevate the natural law to the supernatural level and the true religion of God, which is the Catholic faith, that gives us certainty of the natural law and the supernatural law, and what we need in society is certainty.
Well, that's a good
rather than just trying to reason.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I think there's a formula within the church which says that, well, why did God reveal? And I don't know whether you're going there, but
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Why? Well, he revealed to us even the natural law.
Yeah.
In the Ten Commandments. Why? So that we could know easily, with certainty, and without admixture of error. I think that's the way the Catechism puts it.
Yeah.
Right? And that is necessary for ordinary people like you and me.
Yeah.
But we don't have to go to university to figure this out, right?
Yeah. We can reason.
It's good for people to reason things out. I'm all for that, But you can see that both Pope Benedict and our present Holy Father, they see this. They are looking at the ordinary people and saying, wait a minute, you theologians are fine in your universities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what about these people? What are you teaching them? Are you giving them the truth or aren't you?
Yeah.
And that's really important. So, yes, the natural law is capable of being known by reason. What's the basis of the natural law? What's it founded on?
Yeah.
Then I think at some stage you've got to get to the point where you say there's got to be a God or a type of intelligence which, has put this in place. And so your freedom fundamentally is finding that, because the Pope John Paul II and of course the Pope Benedict, they were very strong on this. They said you cannot divorce freedom from the truth.
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
Freedom, because once you say, it's my freedom above everything, well, wait a minute, that means that if it goes against the truth, you might pick that. Precisely because we have lots and lots of motivations which drive us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even sometimes when we think our motivations are really pure, like I'm going to do this for another person, but in the background there might be things like, well, I'm actually more interested in the fact that people like me. or think I'm a good bloke.
Yeah.
All of those things. I mean, Christ purifies that.
I'm getting to the point now where I want my 3 practical tools.
I would say...
What are 3 practical tools for modern man today, millennials listening, Gen Z, everybody, to truly embrace freedom for what it is in the context of our modern society today? How can we be free? What steps can we take? What practical steps can we take to be free? To live that freedom, to liberate ourselves.
Well, let's go back and say to yourself, what do I want my freedom for? What do I want to build with my freedom? Do I want to be...
A legacy.
Legacy. What do I want to be? Do I want to be a protector or a predator? You like that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
So, with my freedom, am I going to be a protector or a predator? Am I going to be a booster or someone who sucks the life out of people? Right? Am I going to be a person who helps people to flourish or sucks the life out of them?
Yeah.
I mean, a very simple one there.
You give good vibes or bad vibes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're around certain people.
Yeah.
And
they suck the daylight out of you.
They suck the daylights out of you because they're whinging or they're complaining or they're constantly talking, gossiping and stuff like that about how bad other people are.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just... Are you going to be there? Okay, so ask yourself, am I going to be a booster?
Yeah.
Or a... what's the opposite? A sucker.
Sucker, yeah. I was waiting for that, yeah.
Sucking people.
Yeah. That's right, we won't censor you here.
Sucking the life out of people. Am I going to be a person who brings people together?
Yeah.
Or divides them? Am I going to be a predator or a protector? I mean, that's particularly important for blokes with respect to their future wives and marriages. And to realise that, you know, I'm going a bit off task. That's one, okay?
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what am I going to do with my freedom first? Okay? If I have all the freedom I want, what am I going to do with it?
Important question.
Yeah? Because if you're deciding now, because in the end, what you do now, with all of your freedom now, what you do now, you're building up what you're going to be in the future.
Yeah.
It's not... Some people, I mean, young people, I think we always think, you know, I thought too, that, oh, well, I can sow my wild oats and then I'll bring it in. It doesn't work like that. Because in the end, the habits that you have in the future, again, are being formed now.
Yeah.
Now, people have great conversions and things like that, but you really want to build yourself up into the sort of person that you want to be. Your habits now make you the sort of person you want to be. And so maybe that's the second one. Look at your habits.
Yeah.
If you're sloppy now, right? I heard someone say the other day that certain people go into what's called now goblin mode.
Goblin mode, wow.
Where they just don't shower, don't do anything, just wander around, play games, and stuff like that. It's goblin mode, right?
Maybe I have some goblin mode in me.
Yeah, well, we've all got... if we let ourselves go...
You can ask my wife.
Yeah, we've all got goblin mode in us, right? But the important thing is to recognise that and say, well, wait a minute, if I don't want to be goblin mode when I'm a father...
Yeah.
Okay, and make all my kids sort of goblin mode, go into goblin mode because they're going to imitate me.
Yeah.
I have to fix myself up.
Yeah.
I have to be an example. I can't tell the kids later on, oh no, you can't do that, if I'm doing it myself.
Exactly.
So you're getting your future self now. You're building your future self now. And one of the best ways you can use your freedom is to decide what sort of person do I want to be.
Yeah.
And start working towards it.
Exactly.
Get habits.
Habits.
Habits. What
and it
habits?
takes time. You don't just wake up tomorrow a disciplined person. These take years. Yeah. So you better get started now. That's the way to see it. Yeah. That's the way to see it. We can't delay.
But there are so many
There's going to be hurdles along the way.
There are so many things now in the modern, like people coming out with books where Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
You know, the book on Atomic.
Yes,
I haven't read it because in a way, people have said it before. Fix yourself up. You know, if you're a David Goggins, stop thinking about You know, I have some friends who think that David Goggins is wonderful, and look, he's turned himself around, and you've got to admire the guy, right?
Yeah.
But what does he do? He said, no, I've got to turn myself around and make myself into a person who has certain habits of acting.
Yeah.
Habits are so important. People think, oh no, I changed my values. No, change your habits.
I do, therefore I am.
Exactly.
Aristotle.
Well, it's not.
Well, essentially, fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah,
what?
fake it till you make it, because
And
people think I need to change my values, then my habits will come.
Why is that
Not the other way
a
around.
phrase? Because if you do fake it for long enough, you give yourself a habit.
Exactly.
Like, if you say, I don't, and people say it's fake because it's not part of them. Well, this is as old as Aristotle. Aristotle said you gain habits, right?
Yeah.
Eventually they become who you are.
Who you are.
Do you know our phrase second nature?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, this is second nature. We use it with respect to playing the guitar, playing soccer, all sorts of things. This is second nature. Guess who came up with the phrase? Aristotle, talking about virtues. When you get habits, they become second nature.
Wow.
Virtues become second nature.
Some things we just have to start doing. Maybe have the value in mind, but start doing it, and then it ingrains itself in you, and then you become what you're doing.
Yeah.
Rather than just, the values will come and I'll just do it naturally and I'll go with the flow. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. If I tell you that I have the value of generosity,
yeah,
what are you going to look at?
Are you being generous?
Exactly. And generosity is a virtue.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a habit.
Exactly.
What's a generous person?
Start being generous.
A generous person is a person who has the habit of being generous.
Exactly.
So if you don't start on it, you won't get there. Some people have a propensity in a certain direction, but they will have a propensity. They will be probably not so good in certain other things, and they have to work on those.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Martin Fitzgerald,
Has
for
that
being
been
here.
enlightening for you?
It has been. It has been. And the one thing I can't be generous with is another hour to speak about it. But we'll have you in for another episode, perhaps, to talk about it.
There's
so much to talk about.
There's so much stuff we could unpack even in what we've talked
Absolutely,
about.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for being with me here tonight.
It's been a pleasure.
It's an absolute pleasure to speak
and
to you.
I hope it's been helpful for your wonderful audience.
Absolutely. And thank you so much.
Well, good.
Don't forget that tomorrow is the annual Radiothon. So what does that mean? That means all day the radio will be live with different people coming in, showing their support. Of course, this is the one time of year that we ask for your support, your generous support in keeping the radio station live, the Voice of Charity alive, the message of the gospel being brought to the air. So please tune in tomorrow all day. We will be live on the Voice of Charity. Different programs, different people coming in, different people at different times. I will be here live at 8:30 p.m. Is that right, Vera? 8:30 p.m. I'll be here live with Salwa, I believe. Yes, and several other people. And we'll be speaking to you about the need for being generous, especially tomorrow. And please help us in raising for the Voice of Charity to keep the radio station alive. So, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in to Catholic Toolbox, the Art of Practical Catholicism. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa. Until next week, God bless, take care, and take action.
In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.